Happy New Year. And today's a special day for me because it marks exactly 5 years since I got my first C5. 2nd of January 2019, I got in my old Mazda 6 with the seller and went to the registration office, you know, the equivalent of the DVLA here in other countries. And yeah, we did the deal. The old Mazda that I was driving, that was part exchange, thank God. I was absolutely desperate to get rid of it. I'd gone to see the car a couple of days before. Now, I had already been to see other C5s. They were all far right, but the price wasn't just right. I'd seen lots of them. Then this one popped up, and it was very close to where I live. So I had to go along and see it. 250,000 kilometers on the clock. Most of the cars I had seen were all high mileage, but this one felt as tight as a supermodel's buttocks. It felt really good, and I had brought my young daughter along. She was very young, she was about 3 or 4 at the time, and she was like chirping, "Oh, Daddy, this is lovely." I liked it. She really liked the car, and I just felt so at home, and I thought, no, this is the car for me. So I managed to haggle the price down. Also, he offered me money for my old Mazda, parts exchange, not money. And I was very happy with the price he gave me. I had a poker face on, like, oh, well, if that's the best you can do. Oh, because it wasn't far below what I paid for the car. So I was just absolutely happy to get rid of it. Now, I'd not owned a Citroen for nearly 12 years at this point. No, yeah, 14 years. 14 years at this point. I had a Volvo 460, which I swapped for an S60, which I then swapped for the Mazda. I got the Mazda because I needed an estate, a station wagon, because yeah, my kids were growing and they didn't fit in the back of the Volvo. The Volvo is a very good car, but it's not a brilliant family car. It's very, very tight in the back, and the boot access is rubbish, especially if you want to get in a pram or a tricycle. It's a nightmare. Anyway, when I bought the Mazda 6, I really wanted one of these, but they were incredibly expensive. They were at least 10,000 euros or more. So that was a no-go. But I did want to get back into Citroen, simply because I'm a big Citroen fan. I've been a Citroen fan for years and years and years, ever since I was a boy, ever since I can remember, because my dad was, and he had Citroens as far as I can remember, and I grew up in them, so I love them. Anyway, I thought the C5, maybe it's not as bad as I thought it was, because, you know, the original C5 was not loved. And I began to look through the ads. They were accessible. Furthermore, Citroen is a brand that sells a lot in this country, in Portugal, so parts should be easy to come by. It was a nightmare with the Volvo, and they were a lot cheaper as well. They didn't have to be brought in for God knows where like the Volvos had to be. That was a nightmare. But anyway, for Citroen or Mazda, I ended up getting the Mazda because the cubby spaces in the C5, the original C5, were piss poor, to put it mildly. They were awful. It had a nice armrest, but I don't think it had any cup holders. I don't think it had anywhere to put like your phone here in the center console. It wasn't good. It wasn't well designed in that respect. Got the Mazda. I think it had a, how should I put this? On first glance, it had a nicer interior, but then as time went by, I began to hate it with every fiber of my being. And so a year later, I was commuting about 20-40 miles a day. It was a part-time job. It was a temporary job. Just a couple of months I was commuting, and I thought, this isn't cutting it. This car is an absolute nightmare to travel in, because up until then, all the cars that I had, I'd always relished the thought of getting into them and going for a long drive. With the Mazda, it was the opposite. I really didn't like getting into that car, so I thought, this isn't working. I'm going to get rid of it. Also, it wasn't exactly reliable. It was supposed to be. It's Japanese. All Japanese cars are reliable, blah, 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 blah. Bollocks they are. Especially that Mazda. Again, it might have been Ford that poisoned the well. Ford, I think, owned Mazda at this time, and it felt like a Ford, which is not a good thing. It felt cheap and nasty, and the more time I spent in it, it felt cheaper and nastier. Sorry to all you Ford fans, I know you're all very thin-skinned, but you've got to take criticism. I'm a Citroen fan. We get a lot of flack, so we get used to it. Got rid of the car. By the time I had got rid of the Mazda, or should I say I was wanting to get rid of the Mazda, prices for Citroen C5 X7s had come down. So I finally got on board and managed to buy the car that I actually wanted. That was 5 years ago. Got the 1.6 with no hydropneumatic suspension. That was on purpose because, as I said, by this time, I don't know if I mentioned this, the company I had folded and I was doing some temporary work. So I didn't exactly have lots of money to spend on, fuel and hydropneumatic fluid. So I got the cheapest base model I could find that still had loads of bells and whistles. It was absolutely brilliant. I really liked the car. 3.5 years of very happy ownership. We called it the Narwhal. That was our nickname for it. Yes, I do name my cars. This car has a name as well. Maybe one day I'll tell you what it is if I get enough subscribers. YouTubers do that sort of thing, I think, don't they? As soon as I got it, took it to the mechanic, gave it a going over, had to change like a small seal, some kind of rubber O-ring within the engine had failed, and so it had to be replaced. And then it was very cheap and easy to run, very reliable, very comfortable, very brilliant. It's really hard to communicate how brilliant that car was and how happy I was to be back in the Citroen. Of course, you know that because you're watching this channel. This channel is more or less dedicated to the C5. And I liked it so much that when it came time to maybe move on, I got another C5. Well, I should be fair. It wasn't exactly that. If things were different, I probably would have kept that car, but I really wanted the 2-litre diesel engine. I wanted the 6-speed gearbox because the 1.6 just wasn't cutting it. But I've already said this in other videos. But anyway, that's the reason I went back to Citroen, and also why I'm so happy. I'm not tired of this car at all. I still love it to bits. It's still absolutely and utterly brilliant. There is no other car in the world that would tempt me away from this. None at all. I wouldn't mind having another car, for example, like a fleet to try out different cars, and yeah, that would be nice, but I would never get rid of this car. This would be my core member, absolutely. So that's the story of my C5 ownership in a nutshell. And of course, I'd like to thank all of you for being along on this journey. If you've subscribed, if you've watched videos before, thank you very much. And thanks for being there for all the ups and downs. Right now we're in a down because no sodding headliner, but that's a, you'll have to wait and watch the video to find out more. I'm not going to get ahead of myself. And if you want to watch that video and haven't subscribed, please do, so you can see that. And also leave a comment below. If you're a C5 owner, I'd love to know how you got into C5s. I really would. If you're not a C5 owner, leave a comment anyway. Tell us how you got into your particular model of car. I do read all comments, and I answer most of them. I only don't answer the nasty ones. Apart from that, so yeah, feel free to leave a comment below. And thanks very much for watching. And I hope to see you in future videos. I bid you farewell.